But guys, Sony's biggest weakness on the WH-1000 XM5, well, at least
So the Sony WH-1000 XM5 sounds pretty good. There's a surprise at the end of this video, so watch it till the end. But let's start with the good stuff on sound. These drivers are bassy. They can do bass and sub bass very well. They're reasonably fast, they're loud, they're punchy, and very skull shaking. These sound pretty fantastic for hip hop, especially with male vocals, also for EDM. But I have to admit, I'm a bass head and this bass is still too much for me. The tuning out of the box isn't very neutral, but this has been Sony's choice for a while now, and that has been a hit commercially. The great thing about Sony's headphones though is that they have decent drivers, a top-of-the-line codec in LDAC, and an excellent app with a 5-band EQ and a separate bass slider. What does that translate to in English? If you don't like the sound that Sony gives you, there's a very good chance that you can tweak it to what you like. And if you're not a big tweaker, Sony makes it easy by giving you some great presets. For example, I'm a metalhead, and for rock and metal, I could pretty much only hear the bass and low end, so the default tuning just didn't work. So I set the sound to the bright preset and everything opened up, vocals, guitars, drums, while keeping that low end in check. Other than tuning though, the XM5 also has a wide soundstage and the imaging is good but not the most accurate. When it comes to music, voices sound good, and even though the treble can come across a little bit weak at times, it's not really sibilant, and timbres in general sound quite natural on the XM5.
we're just getting started. Goedendag, we're DHRME. Do helpful reviews really matter? Excellence. Sony's excellence continues with its nifty audio features, the DSEE Extreme, which can basically make your poor quality recordings sound better. And you know what? It kind of works, but don't expect it to completely fix bad recordings. But it's a nice feature that often goes ignored in most reviews. You can still use these headphones old school via the audio jack, and the best part is they can be completely turned off. That means if you run out of battery and have a hole for that jack in your source device, the XM5 doesn't become an expensive paperweight. To our ears, it sounded a little less lively when used in this way, but hey, at least it's a choice. It doesn't do audio over USB Type-C, not the biggest of deals in our opinion. Sony also has 360 reality audio, which you can use with supported sources, and you know what? They've been doing this since before Apple's spatial audio, and when it works, it's pretty phenomenal. But you do need a supported source like Tidal to make full use of it. So, you've had our opinion. At the end of this video, we'll have some recordings for you on our new €2,000 recording jig, which we think will give you a pretty good idea of how these sound. So much for that surprise. Sorry, Rohan. So, what about that noise cancelling?
So the noise cancelling on the XM5 is fantastic. We still think it falls a little bit short of the AirPods Max, but it's virtually indistinguishable. It is also slightly improved from the XM4. And again, these are all very, very small differences, but it's pretty impressive that Sony has been able to turn around a new generation of noise cancelling in such a short time. One day we will live in a world where headphones will act as muting devices and hearing aids combined. With the XM5 and the AirPods Max, we're well on our way. Again, there will be noise cancelling tests at the end of this video so you can hear for yourself how it performs. But let's talk about ambient mode or transparency. Use transparency when you don't want to take off your headphones but still hear things around you. You're now hearing my voice as if you're wearing the XM5 in ambient mode. It can go all the way up to 20, the setting this is now on. What do you think? We think it's still not as natural sounding and amplified as the AirPods Max level. You're now hearing my voice coming from the AirPods Max's transparency mode as if you're wearing it with transparency on. Apple is far ahead of the rest on this, don't you think? So, AirPods Max, Sony WH-1000 XM5, nothing. What did you think? And of course, Sony being Sony, you get a whole host of options. First off, we were a bit disappointed to see that there was no wind noise reduction mode in the Headphones Connect app. But you know what? You don't need it anymore due to the design of the new noise cancelling microphones. The wind isn't really an issue, and that's a pretty damn big deal for us here in the Netherlands on all our bikes. Then there's the Sony's usual smorgasbord of noise cancelling options in the app. Adaptive sound control that controls your ANC based on your actions or your locations. Quick attention, cover your ear to activate ambient mode. The confusingly named speak to chat. If you talk, the XM5 pauses your music, activates ambient mode, and then goes back to ANC after you stop talking. Sony's really unbeaten in this level of customization or confusion. Maybe we should make a tips video.
Okay, the XM5 is very light and comfortable. The ear cups are roomier than the XM4. However, the padding seems to be a little on the thin side, which leads us to worry that if you prefer the clamping force to be tight, then there's a small chance that your ears might press against hard plastic. I mean, it didn't happen to us, but we can totally see that being a possibility in some cases. Speaking of clamping force, we were able to find a happy medium between clamping force and good seal. And a slightly loose clamp doesn't affect the ANC too much. Nice. The earpads did get hot after about an hour of use, from about 23 degrees Celsius to close to 31. So if you're in a very warm place or have a very warm face, you probably won't be able to use this for hours on end without a break. Back to the build. It's crazy to us that the XM5 feels so much lighter than the XM4, and with better tech too. We do worry about the telescoping arm, the joints of which you can kind of see through the headband leather. I hope it holds up, but doesn't really look very polished. Rowan, why don't we do a quick twist test to see if this holds up? Those tests always get me. And now a drop test. So even though they're light, they do pretty good on durability. A lot of people have commented on how these headphones don't fold, so we're going to try putting this into a series of bags as compared to the XM4 and see if it's really a problem. Does that non-folding really make a difference? Now, the one place where the non-folding makes a difference is putting it back in the case. Considering the headband doesn't have those satisfying audible notches while adjusting like the XM4 did, the XM5 is a bit harder to adjust. You have to use your thumbs and forefingers to adjust the headband. And you know what? It works. But unfortunately, you have to reduce the size to put it in the case. All that largeness and we still need to readjust every time. At least that's the one thing the AirPods Max bra case got right. The adjustment settings stayed.
The one complaint I have about the build is the glossy finish. I'm an oily person, or at least my skin is an oily organ. Okay, I'm sharing too much information, but these natural oils or artificial ones from things like hair gel are often clearly visible on the headband and the ear cups, giving it that greasy look. Not something very pleasant and needs constant wiping down. The other change of the headphones is that now if you want to wear this around your neck, you're going to have to turn the cups away from you. It seems like a small thing, but this also has a good and a not so good aspect. The not so good part is that the hard plastic rubs against your collarbone and isn't very comfortable. The good thing is that it gives your ear pads some time to breathe so they can cool down and the sweat can evaporate off of the leather. And talking about build, let's talk about the touch surface on the right ear pad. We cannot think of a single negative thing to say about it for the XM5. Two things to talk about here. One, there's almost no noticeable latency between touching and responding. And two, much like the Sennheiser buds we reviewed, every touch also gives you a satisfying sound so that you know you've touched it right. That way, if you had meant to double tap but the headphones register only one of your taps, you also know it because you hear only one tap. This is really Sony's best touch surface implementation yet. And while we always preferred buttons to touch surfaces, we can get on board with this one. Good job, Sony.
And talking about surfaces, these headphones look distinctly different from the last 4 generations of Sony's flagship noise-canceling headphones. And you know what? We dig it. It's not ugly, it's not ultra conservative, it's not very cutting edge, but they're quite subtle and the Sony branding and the slight flare on the yokes is understated and stylish. They come in 2 colors and we have the black one here. We talked about the case, but a kind of useless feature is that the case can be compressed to a bit thinner, but that won't work if your headphones are in the case. So this is probably to make the box smaller or store your case. Other than the size, we're also a bit concerned that the case isn't as hard as it used to be. That's what she... The XM4 and all the previous generations had harder cases, but what is nice is this Bose 700 inspired magnetic compartment inside to store cables. Speaking of cables, you don't get the airplane adapter anymore. But it's about time. Airplanes, screw you and your crappy food and high carbon emissions and weird adapters. Okay, that got unnecessarily emotional. Sorry airlines, you guys are okay. So, design summary. There are strengths and weaknesses. But guys, Sony's biggest weakness on the WH-1000 XM5, well, at least till before it. You ready for it? Yes, phone calls. Well, this was Sony's biggest weakness up until the XM4, but buds, we're glad to say that Sony has come through this time. So far, every time we've used the XM5, whether it be biking, indoors, or in a noisy place, people haven't complained. In fact, just yesterday, Rowan actually got a compliment on how clear he sounded while he was taking a call on the bike. A compliment on Sony's microphones. If you've been following us for a while, you know that that is a big deal. We've also posted a bunch of shorts here on the channel testing this in all kinds of real-life situations. And since this is a full review, here are some real-life samples of Rohan on the bike.
In addition to that, the wind noise cancelling on the mics. So I'm cycling along this path, which is not very windy, but windy enough to be a practical wind mic test. This is how the grass looks like. It is mildly windy and I can hear it in my microphones. But can you also hear wind in this call? Can you hear wind from the microphones of the Sony WH-1000 XM5? Let me know. Since the XM4, Sony has had multi-point and it works pretty well between two devices. But call us old-fashioned or call us owners of one too many devices, we just prefer to use these on LDAC, one device at a time. Here's the kicker though. Once you pair them to all your devices, you can switch by just selecting the XM5 from the Bluetooth menu. You can pull the connection from a source device without a single hitch. We notice that every review talks about multi-point, but not many mention the fact that you can actually use more than two devices in this way. Brutally underrated. Continuing on from the XM4, the XM5 also has a wear sensor that automatically pauses music when you take these headphones off. This wear sensor isn't visible to the naked eye anymore like on the XM4, but it's clearly in the left ear cup since taking off the right ear pad doesn't pause the music. But not sure how many people just use one ear pad on its own. The feature worked fairly reliably in our time with it, but very rarely started playing audio when it wasn't around our ears. But that was less than 10% of the time, so not really worth talking about. You also get a choice of Google Assistant or Alexa on the XM5, but you can also just use whatever assistant you have on your phone, and that's usually good enough for us. Before we get to the conclusion and the audio samples, Sony's packaging has been its most visible effort at sustainability, and all its products recently have followed suit. The XM5 is no different. No plastic here, and it's designed according to low toxicity principles and the philosophy of made to be recreated, which I guess translates to parts are reusable. Not sure what that means. However, the product packaging is made from recycled and sustainable materials, specially developed for Sony. And yet again, recycled plastic from car parts is also used for the XM5, which is great to hear. Good on Sony for putting sustainability at the forefront of its consumer products.
So guys, what's the conclusion here? The XM5 is pretty freaking expensive. No two ways about that. And you know what? If you're someone who wants to buy it at its original launch price, know that you're getting a very good, well-rounded product. Sure, the sound may not be tuned to the audiophile's liking, but this is nothing new. This is how Sony tunes its ANC headphones. And to be honest, we think it must be the result of a lot of research. Maybe this is what people consider good sound. I mean, their headphones have been so successful, we think they know what they're doing. In fact, when we reviewed the first ANC headphones from Sony, the MDR1000X, more than 5 years ago, yes, we've been doing YouTube for that long, it was clear to us that Sony knew how to tune a more neutral set of cans. So this is clearly a choice. But the XM4, as we've been saying throughout this review, is also very good. What makes it hard for us as reviewers is that Sony's prices fluctuate a lot. So keep an eye out for the links in the description. They will give you the real-time prices on the XM4 and the XM5, and using them also supports this channel. So at the launch of the XM5, if you're cheap like us, you would probably get the XM4. It's excellent and can do many things well, but it is clearly, and let us be very direct here, clearly the inferior product. Sony has fixed its biggest weakness, which is phone calls, and done it while managing to improve the ANC, tap controls, and comfort in a completely new design. The only minus we can think of is the slightly larger case, but we've been testing it thoroughly day in and day out for weeks to see if that really is an issue. And it wasn't for us, so the XM5, it's a recommend from us. If it's out of budget, then get the XM4, or maybe wait for a price drop, or maybe money doesn't matter to you at all, in which case support us on Patreon. Oh, and get the XM5. We're also going to compare the XM5 to the best ANC headphones, so keep an eye out for that video. You've been supporting poor YouTubers, and we've been DHRME. Namaste. Sound and ANC samples coming up.
Way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause I was being next to you. Way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause all I needed was my friend. Way back when, way back when, way back when, way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause I was being next to you. Way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause all I needed was my friend. Way back when, way back when, way back when, way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause I was being next to you. Way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause all I needed was my friend. Way back when, way back when, way back when, way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause I was being next to you. Way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause all I needed was my friend. Way back when, way back when, way back when, way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause I was being next to you. Way back when we didn't care what they said. People could stare, I didn't give a damn, 'cause all I needed was my friend. Way back when.